to the People's Candidate Forum. Joining us now is Councilmember Ritchie Torres, candidate for Congress in District 15. Thank you for your interest in representing this community. Let's begin. I will start off with an icebreaker question, okay? Please share a 1 or 2 word intention you hold for today's interview.
A 1 or 2 word intention? Learn, laugh. That's all you can hope to do in life. Survive.
So the first question is, the South Bronx has been disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 outbreak. With public health officials forecasting a potential second wave, what will you do if you are hired to respond to this ongoing crisis?
Well, I agree with the premise of your question that, the South Bronx has long been ground zero for racially concentrated poverty, and the racial inequalities were laid bare by COVID-19. The only strategy for containing a virus is to conduct widespread testing, isolate the infected, trace their contacts, and quarantine the exposed. So we need to ensure that we have a public health army that's pursuing all of those strategies, including encouraging the population to wear face masks. I think face coverings are much more effective than people might realize. If you look at all the countries that have been effective at controlling the virus, whether it's Taiwan or South Korea or Hong Kong, all of them pursued a robust program of testing and contact tracing. And we have to prioritize communities of color. And keep in mind, the city did not have walk-through testing until mid-April, a month and a half after the shutdown of the city. We did not have a contact tracing program until May. So the city has taken too long to respond to the outbreak of COVID-19 in communities of color.
Thank you.
In regards to criminal justice reform and jails, Congressman Jose Serrano has stood with a large contingent of community members who oppose the city's plan to build a new jail in Mont Haven. What is your position on the plan, which would put the new jail on a plot of land already earmarked by the community for an affordable housing development? What have you done, or what will you do to advance your position on this?
Look, I did not prefer the location that was chosen, but I did vote for the bill because my concern is the jails on Rikers Island are unlawfully unsafe. And we had 2 options: either rebuild the jails on Rikers Island, which everyone agrees is ground zero for the criminalization of mental illness and poverty and people of color, or build borough-based jails where inmates could have access to their families and to their local community. And I agreed with the borough-based model. It's worth noting that 4 out of 5 boroughs, with the exception of the Bronx, already had borough-based jails. So we were simply rebuilding facilities that were already present. If I had voted no, then we would have derailed a 2-year process that was necessary for the closing of jails in Rikers Island. And I felt it was wrong to vote no on a proposal that was essential for closing Rikers Island. Khalif Browder was a constituent of mine. His experience at Rikers Island was so traumatic that he wound up committing suicide. I felt the city had to do everything it can to see to it that history does not repeat itself. So did I love the location? I did not. I preferred a co-location with the courthouse, but sometimes in life you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a quick response question for you.
Sure.
Please complete the following sentence. Today I want to make the world
A more just place, a racially just place.
Public housing question. Residents of NYCHA have been facing deplorable conditions for decades due to federal underfunding. What will you do to fix public housing with less public funding available than ever before because of the current economic crisis?
I mean, we need public funding. Like boilers, roofs, bricks do not pay for themselves. It requires public investment. I'm a product of public housing. I would not be where I am today were it not for public housing. I see it as the greatest safety net of deeply affordable housing in the country. If public housing were a city, it would be the largest city of Black and Brown New Yorkers and Americans. So we need a $50 billion investment, but we should not only rebuild public housing in the same form. We have a historic opportunity to reinvent public housing as the greenest city in America, right? Solar panels, microgrids, rooftop gardens. I think if you think of Villa Verde, every public housing development could look like Villa Verde with the right amount of federal investment. So the federal government should get back in the business of investing properly in public housing.
Thank you.
You know, we have 60,000 people in our shelter system. If public housing were to disappear, we would have hundreds of thousands of people overflowing our shelter system. Public housing is too big to fail.
Thank you. Let's talk about affordable housing. Who is it really affordable for? Community members, as you might be aware, have embraced the concept of community land trusts, which will take property off the speculative real estate market and open opportunities for deeply affordable housing. What specific actions will you take to ensure that affordable housing and home ownership are attainable things for folks in our community?
Look, I would love to see, first, I'm partnering with the Northwest Bronx Project Coalition to create community land trust here in the Bronx, but I would love to see public housing residents offer the option of placing public housing in a community land trust. Why not have tenants become owners, create wealth, and provide affordability at the same time? I am a strong supporter of the Section 8 program because a housing voucher caps your rent at 30% of your income. As you pointed out, too much of the affordable housing we're creating is unaffordable to the poorest New Yorkers because the federal government measures affordability arbitrarily by area median income. We have the same area median income as Rockland County, right? Affordability should not be based on some arbitrary measure like area median income. It should be based on your income. You should pay no more than a percentage of your income toward your rent so that you have enough left over to pay for food, utilities, healthcare, prescription drugs, all the necessities of life.
Thank you.
I'm trying to stay within the 2 minutes. So.
In regards to arts and culture, a majority of the creative workforce, meaning artists in all disciplines, are freelancers and/or seasonal workers. COVID-19 has resulted in a dramatic loss of income for them. What would you do to help creative workers overcome these challenges?
One of my frustrations is we often speak of American exceptionalism. The problem with America is that we're exceptionally cruel to our own people. Most of Europe, particularly France, invest in artists. Right? We should be investing in housing for artists, creative workspaces for artists. There's been a lack of the arts in public education. I'm proud that since 2014, the City Council has been investing more in arts education. But I don't want to live in a country or a city that has no sense of culture or art. And research has shown that art is not only a value unto itself, but it improves your ability to read, to do mathematics. It improves your academic performance across the board. It makes you not only a better student, but a better person. And I feel like the point of our society, the point of our school system should be to produce well-rounded people.
Thank you, Councilmember Torres.
Thanks. Small businesses in our district were already hurting because of rent hikes, the influx of big box stores, and online sales. Now, with COVID and looting, they have fallen further behind. What would you do to restart small business and promote entrepreneurship in our district?
Look, we need to, I think one thing the federal government did wrong was create a program that was on paper for small businesses, but was co-opted by corporations or by larger not-for-profits like Harvard University. So we need to provide assistance to our small businesses, but with the condition that those businesses maintain their workforce. I think that was a strategy that was pursued successfully in Germany during the Great Recession. Germany provided assistance to businesses, required them to preserve their payroll, and was able to weather the Great Recession far more effectively than the United States. That's the right strategy for responding to an economic recession in the wake of COVID-19.
Thanks.
How specifically would you provide teeth to the community-driven solutions that have been articulated over the years by many of the organizations hosting this forum and others that you may have engaged while on the campaign trail?
What do you have any solutions in particular, or?
Do you? Do you need the question?
I'll just, it's a vague, it's a broad question, but I'll answer it like this. So a few years ago, I led a delegation of elected officials to Mondragon, which has the largest ecosystem of worker-owned cooperatives in the world. And what I love about Mondragon is that it thinks not only about particular substantive issues, but governance. Is that in corporate America, in every facet of life, you need democratic governance. The workers are not only employees, they're actually employers. They're actually owners in the business. That is a model that I would love to see, because not only are you creating jobs, but you're creating wealth in communities of color. You're giving communities of color a voice in the distribution of resources in our societies. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that's an example of creating grassroots democratic governance.
Thank you.
So I have a quick response question for you.
Sure.
Answer yes or no. Do you think drug use is a criminal justice concern?
If you're a person of color, yes. If you're a white person, apparently not.
Thank you.
Apparently it's a mental health issue when you're white.
If you're elected, how would you use your leverage in the federal government to address the South Bronx's vulnerability to the impacts of climate change?
Look, I feel like one of the original sins of federal policy in the early 20th century was the decision in the wake of World War II to prioritize highway construction for federal funding, right? That's what led to disinvestment from communities of color, redlining, disinvestment from public transit. So we need to readjust the federal priorities in order to reverse the legacy of Robert Moses. I would love to see a decommissioning of the Cross Bronx Expressway. I think we should think broadly. We should electrify vehicles in the South Bronx and throughout the city. We should electrify the heating systems in our housing infrastructure. I think what we need is, I support the Green New Deal. What we need is a fundamental restructuring of our society around renewable energy. We have to phase out fossil fuels in every sector of the American economy, whether it be agriculture, energy, real estate, or transportation. And that's especially needed in the South Bronx. And research has shown that there's a correlation between pollution and COVID-19 morbidity and mortality, right? The places that have the highest pollution also had the highest death rate.
To wrap up the People's Candidate Forum today, how would you articulate a set of planning principles that will guide development that will serve to both preserve and grow the district? And how would you include the community in the adoption of those principles?
Look, I think when you're an elected official, first, you cannot become in love with the prestige or power of your office, right? You have to recognize that not all wisdom or knowledge is concentrated in your mind. There's a wider community of activists who have been working on these issues far longer than you have, and you should strive to the extent possible to govern in partnership. That does not mean that I do whatever the activists tell me, but that there's a respectful, communicative relationship, right? There has to be a relationship with activists on the ground, but well before there was a Green New Deal, there was a rich and long tradition of environmental justice in the South Bronx, and it would be criminal and scandalous for me not to tap into that tradition representing the South Bronx. So I do believe in governing in partnership with activists, but it's hard work, and there have been moments in my career where I have failed to do it effectively, and I try to live and I learn.
Thank you. This next one requires a yes or no answer. Before today, had you taken a pledge against taking money from big corporations like real estate developers and other special interests?
So the only pledge I've taken is a no corporate PAC pledge, because it's a simple, like everyone knows what a corporate PAC is. It has an objective meaning. I have not taken pledges regarding individuals. I will take, unless someone's a bad actor, I will take money from a particular individual, because frankly, I don't know, I could have a friend who has, a portfolio and maybe he has 1% real estate. I don't have, it's not realistic for me to conduct an extensive background check before accepting a contribution. So I said to myself, what did I do as a city council member? I ran under a campaign finance system of small donations where you were prohibited from accepting corporate contributions. And so I applied that same rule to my candidacy as a congressperson. And it's worth noting, over the last 3 days, I have raised $60,000 from 3,000 donors. So we have big donors, yes, but we also have a broad base of small donors as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for your interest in serving as the next congressperson in District 15. The people of the district will make a decision on June 23rd. We want you to be well and stay safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care.